Welcome, everybody. First and foremost, I would like to extend my gratitude to the entire team at NETCO for making this webinar possible, as well as all the previous events organized by NETCO. Special thanks go to first Maite Arrondo, which was the former NETCO coordinator and the original driving force behind this initiative. Second, to Gosia, our project manager, liaising with the European Union. Third, to Sergio, our communication and social media manager. Fourth, to Pierre, a collaborator from UrbaMonde, helping us to draft the final report and designing the conceptual framework for collaborative housing. And finally, to Michael, a collaborator from ID22, helping us to organize all the sessions and events previously done. So allow me to present myself. My name is Eduardo González de Molina, a policy consultant for the Barcelona City Council Housing Department. I'm the current coordinator of NETCO, the European Network of Cities for Collaborative Housing. So let me go into the program that we are going to see today. So first, I'm introducing myself right now. I'm going to explain a little bit about what is NETCO and what has been done before, and then we are going to have a little presentation by Pierre talking about the conceptual framework of collaborative housing. We are going to move on to the round table. There will be presentations, first by Artur Fornés from Barcelona, explaining the case, and then Christine from Oslo, and then Rebecca from Brussels. And then we have discussion between all of us. Then on the policy recommendations. So basically all the network that is going to all this network and the result of this network is now available and that report is going to be presented by Michael and by Pierre. And finally, Maite Arrondo will the conclusions and what next in how to move on in this network. So moving on, NETCO is an initiative supported by the European Commission. It emerged from a proposal by the City of Barcelona to promote peer learning and exchange among municipal public servants, practitioners, and civil society organizations, focused on promoting collaboration. So the main task, the main goal, the main mission for this network, facilitate the sharing of knowledge and expertise on how to promote collaborative housing between European, local, and regional governments. And additionally, NETCO works to raise awareness and foster cooperation with civil society and research institutions to enhance the understanding and implementation of these housing models. So here you are seeing right now how many European cities are currently involved in this network. I'm going to say all of them. There are 16: Amsterdam, Torino, Barcelona, Bologna, Brussels, Cluj-Napoca, Dresden, Dumfries, Eindhoven, Berlin, Ljubljana, Lyon, Navarra, Oslo, Strasbourg, Thessaloniki, and Zagreb. And we hope that the future NETCO will attract more and more cities to this task. So what did we do during the last 2 years? The NETCO started in November 2022, and is going to end the end of this month. During all this time, we have made up to 4 big events one in Bologna, the other in Barcelona, the other in Berlin, and the other in Brussels, plus 2 more online meetings, 2 webinars. This is the one of them, the last of them. Each meeting has involved project visits, conferences, and so on. First was in Bologna. In Bologna, we studied the legal framework referred to the diverse legal statutory provisions and administrative regimes that municipalities and regional governments needs to adopt in order to help and removing all the barriers to help and to support this kind of collaborative housing. In Bologna, we visited as well 2 great, among others, 2 great co-housing projects, real projects. One was Porto 15 co-housing, and the other Salus space. Next, we moved to Barcelona. In Barcelona, we focus on sustainable innovation. Sustainable innovation is increasingly important because of the climate change problem we have. So, and it's not only about increasing the energy efficiency, but it's about to design to design the architecture and the building in order to reduce energy and water consumption and to be net zero emission. During Barcelona, we visited as well 2 great co-housing projects. One was La Borda and the other was La Charshire. And then we moved to Berlin. The Berlin meeting was all about funding mechanism. So how to, from the government, how to help these projects to be financial viable. And in that sense, talking about all the different policies that you need to promote this idea, giving land, giving soft loans, and giving long-term financial support. And then we visited real projects. Sorry for my German. First was model project Haus der Statistik. The other was Spritfield Housing Cooperative, and then the Mithauser Syndicat Kumi. And finally, we were in Brussels. That was the last one. And the focus was on inclusion in collaborative housing. So the different strategies to develop and maintain practices of inclusion in this kind of collaborative and affordable housing. So in terms of reducing speculation, reducing exclusionary measures, and increasing the diversity of the community that are involved in this kind of projects. And we visited as well 2 great, and among others, 2 great housing projects, Calico and Casali. So my part is going to end. Yeah, thank you everyone for joining us. And I'm going to give the floor to Pierre to move on. Thank you.
Thank you, Eduardo. I'm Pierre Arnold. I work for UrbaMonde, which is a French and Swiss NGO, and also for World Habitat, which is a UK-based foundation which organizes the World Habitat Awards. And I've been part of NETCO during the last year, participating in some meetings that Eduardo mentioned now and writing the report that we're going to share with you and together with Michael LaFond. So the first question here was about conceptualizing quickly collaborative housing, which is an umbrella term for a large spectrum of housing models. So a lot of publications talk about it with different approaches, and it always involves residents and other stakeholders. And many projects have been recognized nationally and internationally by competitions, architecture competitions. And the one I collaborate with are the World Habitat Awards. And in the last editions of the awards, we've had quite a lot of winners from community-led housing projects. For example, this year, a cooperative in Geneva, which is called La Sigu, which gives accommodation to students and is managed by students. And for another age range, New Ground Co-housing, which is a co-housing for elderly people. And then there has been in the past like cooperatives from Barcelona, from Sostre Civic and La Borda, the Community Land Trust Brussels, Mehrheitswohnen Cooperative from Zurich, or for example, Mascop, sorry, from the south of France. When we had discussions with the cities, it's quite difficult to get to a perfect definition that has everyone agreeing on it, but a couple of essential elements is that here we're talking from the perspective of local and regional governments, so public authorities, which manage public funding. So the NETCO approach is that collaborative housing should be where public interest overlaps with community interest. So this means that there is a mix between bottom-up initiatives like co-housing and eco-villages, self-building initiatives, and other intentional communities that emerge here and there in Europe and in other regions, and the public interest, which is represented by public housing, rental, or home purchase, affordable home purchase programs that are led by either public or limited profit organizations. So the synthesis is where we have a mix between public funding and public land apportations or a specific framework that gives the possibility for bottom-up initiatives to get public funding and public benefits. For example, community land trusts and cooperatives. We're going to have some examples in the roundtable, and also co-housings that are on public land, for example, or with public benefits. So to summarize, it's a partnership between local governments and group of residents or community organizations that manage sustainable housing solutions. Of course, we know that there is also in the private sphere, the private market, there are possibilities to have collaborative projects, collaborative investment schemes, or co-living, which is in another sphere where cities have no reach and no responsibility, because this is for other market rages, and it's not really the concern of NETCO, but we know that it exists and that it's happening in European cities. So basic requirements for what NETCO is concerned in terms of collaborative housing, as a minimum agreement between the discussions in the cities is that co-housing or collaborative housing should at least have some common spaces shared by the residents. An organization of residents may be an association or another legal form that manages these shared spaces and also participate in the coordination and activities happening in the housing and maybe other facilities associated to it. And that there's a participation of residents or the organizations in certain decisions, can be regarding the rents, the costs of the homes, or changes that will happen in the building, or the admission criteria for new residents, depending of course on the context, but that there is a say of the organization of residents in their structure of their housing. And then we have more advanced requirements that for some of the cities in NETCO are actually basic requirements, some of them, and we will see this in the presentations. But this is more for cities which have already an experience with this kind of collaborative housing, for example, to focus only on affordable housing, to make sure that collaborative housing has access to funding because it is considered as social housing or supported housing. Non-speculative land tenure, we will see examples from Barcelona and from Brussels talking about this. High involvement of the future residents in the design phase of the building. So before the project starts, that there is a concrete moment and that can be facilitated where there is a discussion and co-design. The interaction between the constructions, the buildings, or the retrofitted areas and the neighborhoods. So it's not a bubble in a place, but it is really connected with what is going on around it in the neighborhood through shared facilities or activities led by the residents. And finally, in some collaborative housing projects, there is an intention of social integration of vulnerable groups of the population, which is very, depending on the local context, can be with migrants, with people victims of violence, people with some kinds of disabilities, people living in the streets. So it's really context-based. So we have a great diversity of cities, and the consideration vary from one to the other. But at least we have a common ground, and also some things to aspire as sustainable homes for the future. So now I'll leave the floor to my colleague Michael LaFond from ID22, who will facilitate the roundtable for today.
Okay, thank you very much, Pierre, and also for Eduardo and everybody else who was mentioned earlier for developing this network over the last couple of years and bringing it to where we are today online. As was said, we got to visit 4 cities over the last year and a half. We'll get a short presentation from 2 of those, from Barcelona and Brussels. We didn't get to go to Oslo. I'm sorry about that, but I'm happy to get some input from up there in the north. So these 3 presentations, they will reflect the diversity of the network. So if we have 17 or 18 different European cities participating, as everyone can imagine, going from the north to the south or the east to the west, we have some different approaches, some different housing cultures, and some different strategies. So that's been a big part of it, is exchanging experiences, learning from each other. And in the next minutes, we'll have short presentations from Barcelona, Oslo, and Brussels. And assuming we still have some time after the presentations, we'll have time for a short discussion and some questions, perhaps also from people online. So if you have questions, you could be sending those to us through the chat. Okay, so to start off with, and please, the presenters, Artur, Kristen, and Rebecca, watch the time. If you can have somewhere around 7 minutes for your presentation, that would be great. If it goes too much beyond that, then I might be interrupting to ask you to come to a conclusion. So here we start off with Barcelona, and we don't have time for big introductions. So Artur Fornés, maybe you can say something about yourself as well, your position with the city. Okay, thank you. Artur and Barcelona.
Buenas tardes. Bueno, ya me ha presentado Michael, soy Artur Fornés, que soy un consultor abogado en...
Good afternoon.
Well, I was already
I have
introduced
been
by Michael. I'm
introduced by
Artur
Michael.
Fornés. I'm a lawyer
I
and
am
a consultant
a lawyer,
that works
housing
at the
advisor in the
co-housing
municipality
program
of
in Barcelona. Next one,
El modelo
please.
de Barcelona parte de,
All right.
del intento de ser
So
un modelo
the Barcelona
Barcelona's
model
model
stems from this idea
tries
of
to
being
be an
an
emergent
emerging
model.
movement. We double-checked and we
Because
realized that
only
the private management of social housing didn't work
management
in
did
our
not
country,
work in our
and the
country,
and the
100%
promotion
public
for
management is not
social housing is not
viable
a
if we want to be
systematic
systemic.
model and is not
The
feasible.
program
Therefore, the
of
collaborative model inside
collaborative
social housing is a program that
housing
works for this
is a
PPP
model,
model, putting
and
together the
we have
different
to use
synergies,
the
the different
synergy of the
experiences of the
experiences
private
of
market,
the
as well
private
as the
market,
public
of the
market,
public
together
market, of
with the different
the
operators
operators.
and stakeholders without any
This
profit purposes. Next one,
program
please. Next one. Okay, this one. This program
was born
comes from
from
the Right to
the
Housing
housing
Plan 2016-2025. We are reaching to the
2016-2025,
end of this
and
plan. And
you
if
can
you
see that
realize,
this
this
program
co-housing program
is
only
only
has 535
500%
units, so
units,
only 3%.
only
Why?
3% of our
Because
total goal,
the main
because the
focus
focus
is
on
on
the
the
rest
social
of
housing, to have
social housing
emergency, to have an
for
affordable
affordable rental, for social
plan, and
rental,
also
for
to
relocations,
see what are
and
the
so on.
solutions as well.
The main
The
objectives of
main
the
situation
co-housing program
really wants to
focused
diversify
on diversifying the
the
housing
collaborative
offer through
housing program.
collaborative housing.
So, on the one hand, the public administration has
retains
the property
the
of
tenure
the
of the
land,
land,
and what we offer
is
to the cooperative
given
and with
to the
this
cooperative is
non-profit organization is the right of
a right
surface
of
and flight,
rehabilitation,
or also the rehabilitation of something that was already built. In this specific case, we want to prevent speculation. We want to guarantee the long-term housing stability of users. So, it's a model between rent and property, but through this right of use, we will have a long-term housing stability. And on the other side of the program, always taking into account the great experiences in the US and in Europe, the best practices, we will be able to promote the collaborative management of real estate, the privacy of the home, also together with different collaborative spaces. More specific aspects, such as the model, in this specific case, the City Council of Barcelona. Next one, Pierre. So it really offers the surface right through the transfer of public land for 75 or 99 years. They are renewable, but usually it's 75 or 99 years. It depends on the different allocation methods of the public line, and the non-profit cooperative builds and constructs and manages the building. And we offer the use of the right of use, as the Spanish legislation says, for an individual use, through a right of use of the cooperative members. There are no sales or reclassifications of a protected housing, avoiding the commercialization of accommodation, but the rights of use may be transferred between partners. Projects must include social and environmental return criteria, as well as criteria oriented to the community spaces and integrated management with territory social financing. So, it's a project aiming at the working class or medium class. It's not a project for the less favored sectors. We will have in this specific sector the emergency housing plans. Once the deadline, once we went beyond this concession of the right of use, all the profits must be for the public administration. Through this right, the public administration, in this specific case, Barcelona City Council, becomes as well as a public operator that can intervene in the market beyond the promotions where the City Council is the single and only promoter. We do have 130 houses of the 535 that we have. We do have 130 something houses that were already finished. In this slide, one of the key aspects of the model of this eco-housing program, the user requirements include being registered in the city of Barcelona, not owning any other home. This is something that I told before, and not exceeding the maximum income limit, right? For being an owner, they do not have to have any home in the city, and the salary has to be the average salary. Well, it depends on the amount of people living in the family unit, but it would be maximum less than 50,000 euros per year. Okay, we do also grant the affordability because these projects will be around 20%. They will have this land transfer at a very low rate, almost symbolic, and they must be in relationship with social protection houses. Therefore, they will be around 700 euros per month, right? So all of the members must live in Barcelona and they must belong to the Barcelona census. Barcelona City Council also offers financial improvements that consist of a tax deduction that has an impact on the houses, such as the taxes for construction and many other taxes that are deducted. And it also offers the different next generation programs for health. As you know, that in Spanish legislation will reach up to 50% of the cost, 450 to 700 euros per square meter, depending on the rent that cooperative members will pay. And we do offer another very important support, which is accompanying all the members where to get funds. So we are the ones that will guarantee the loan, and the banks, we as responsibles will offer 60–80% of the total cost of the houses and homes. Usually for 35 units, 40 units, we will talk around 6 million euros in total. This program, and if you allow me, this surface right is given to cooperatives with a very low rate and is paid once we pay the mortgage after 25 or 30 years. So this allows not to overcharge the activity of the cooperative that will have to make a huge effort to pay the mortgage and the interest rates. Beyond that, depending on the specific cases in Barcelona City Council, we offer a direct fund that has to be given back on a long-term basis that can reach up to 25% of the development cost. This has been made through 3 different programs. First of all, through bilateral agreements from 2014-2015 for 2 pilot projects, total 33 units, also public tenders, 2016-2019, 8 projects, total 217 units, and an alliance city council cooperatives foundations, we call it the ASAL agreement, where you can find all the cooperatives and the foundations of the city council to build collaborative houses and also affordable houses that has as main purpose to produce 1,000 units, and 40%, around 400 units, will be for collaborative housing. Next one. Okay, here you can see some pictures of one of the houses that were built. Pierre Arnold talk about the projects. We do have the La Boda, a pilot project that was awarded, as Pierre Arnold said, it was the tallest building made in wood. It was built in an ancient textile factory, so it was very important for the city to recover the old factories. The next one, here you can see the different projects, maybe the bigger ones, the ones that we are building. Next one. And so the SAL agreement, as I said, we can see that the cooperative association, the foundations, also we do have the active role of public institutions, which are the public housing promoters together with Barcelona City Council. It's not in the end a common deal and trust because we don't have a legal statute, but we want to be a common legal trust and to be, let's say, a systemic element in such a way that we will offer housing in the future. Next one. Here you can see in the picture, that's a very important picture, not for the people that we are in the picture, but in the end, this is a great agreement between the Barcelona City Council and two public banks, the Spanish bank and the Official Credit Institute and the Catalan credit institutions. Both are committed to allocate 140 million euros for financing 70% of the projects. Next one. In this map, you can see the different places where we build the projects. Usually, it's in new construction surfaces and plots of land, but in the end, we try to have an homogeneous distribution to offer this kind of housing all over the city. This is very appealing. This kind of collaborative housing is always very appealing in the different neighborhoods. And we do hope that from a private perspective, we'll have quite a positive repercussion. I think that I went beyond the time that was given. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Artur. No problem. It's true, we are running a little bit behind time, but still I would like to ask you two questions that have been presented to us. The first one, and please just short answers, but the first one is, you said in the presentation there could be 1,000 units built over the next 10 years. Are you optimistic about that, or could it be perhaps even be more than that? The second question is it possible for other cities to access next generation EU financing for housing like this? Or is this program already expired?
I did get the questions made by Michael. Yes, very, very quickly. Well, right now we are in Nassau, we are around 150 new units in 7-8 promotions. They are very small. After the criteria of 40% more or less, we are around 60-70 that will be for the collaborative program. However, it is important, you do know that there was a change of the government in the city, and the new government will foster this tool, this systemic tool to promote this public and private social housing. And also, you asked me about the Next Generation Fund. Yes, the promotions that are up to date, and all the promotions, they have the Next Generation, and also these funds, as I said before, in my presentation, it can reach up to 50%. In the majority of cases, it's a little bit lower, usually to 150, 500 euros, 250 euros per square meter as funds allocation per square meter. And this is very important to reduce, right, all over Europe, the rise of prices of materials, and also the increase of the rates. And in social housing for limited interest, it has been, well, a very big problem. So, well, it was a huge problem for the promotion of social housing in Europe, but mainly in Spain, due to inflation and high interest rates, and also 40% of the costs of materials for construction.
No surprise, Barcelona has had an impressive collaborative housing program over the last years. No surprise that Barcelona has taken the lead in launching this network. So nice to see the good examples moving forward. So we see the presentation on the screen already. I hope you can see it. We're moving up to the north, where the sun is also shining. And we're going to hear about collaborative housing in Oslo with Kristen. Okay. Thank you, Kristen, in advance.
Thank you. I hope you hear me. Yes, so my name is Kristin Kjæros. I work for the City of Oslo with housing. And I should probably just say up front that collaborative housing in Oslo does not fit neatly into the definition of the NETCO project, and that has to do with our context and the policies that are already in place. What I will talk about is kind of where we are at the moment and some of the barriers and maybe some of the things that we are keen to learn more about. Yes, so the Oslo context. Oslo is a fast-growing city. For quite a long time, it was one of the fastest-growing cities in Europe. We have had rapidly increasing housing prices with over doubling of housing prices over the last 10 years. All new developments, or most new developments, are happening through densification strategies, so they're quite intensive in that sense. The housing context in Oslo is also particular in that we have a market liberal approach, and is often in Norway is often described as Norway has the most market liberal housing sector in Europe. So in that sense we are a bit different than the Nordic countries generally when it comes to housing. The City of Oslo owns very little land, and we have a policy of selling land at market price. And we have a concentration of ownership in the private developer market. So that means that there aren't necessarily all that much room for the city itself to take an active role when it comes to land. Yes, Oslo is also a homeowner city. 68% of households own their own home. And that is still like also a national strategy that everyone should have the ability to own their own home, which means that we have also neglected the rental sector quite a bit through recent history. 30% of households in Oslo are organized as housing cooperatives, which I will talk a bit more about later on. We have a very small public housing sector, so social housing only comprises 4%, which is too small at the moment for our demands. 50% of households are single-person households, and we are seeing a very increase in loneliness measures, and we also have an aging population, which means that the housing needs in the years to come is mainly for people above 60 years old, which is also quite particular. Yes, so I thought I would contextualize the Norwegian or the Oslo situation within the kind of cooperative housing sector in Oslo, because we have had a very strong cooperative housing sector, which started over 100 years ago, and was initiated by unions building housing for their members. And like I said, 30% of housing in Oslo is today cooperative housing. It was in the post-war era, it was self-built, and cooperatives were both supported through the municipal acquisition of land, long-term land leases, and affordable loans by the state housing bank. So maybe perhaps it's a similar model to what Barcelona is developing at the moment, is something we have had earlier on. This model was formalized in the 1960s as a joint ownership shareholder model with individual housing cooperatives that were organized through cooperative housing associations. And so this democratic structure has been upheld. So in these housing cooperatives, you have general assemblies and you have a local board which is elected and which manages each individual housing cooperative, and that gets help and guidance from the larger cooperative housing associations. And this sector was price regulated until the 1980s, 1990s, but it's now what has become unique about it is that it's become a market-based sector. So all houses are sold at market price, and the cooperative housing associations build new housing based on market, like general kind of market principles. And the rules that were in place where the municipal was able to lease out land is not there anymore in the legal framework, and the State Housing Bank neither does provide the kind of loans that we have. So the kind of the sector has been, you can say, fragmented in a way, but the cooperative, but the housing cooperatives are still there. And for talking about collaborative housing in Oslo, I think it's an important sort of contextualization for where we start and maybe where some of the potential lie. So in thinking about and talking about then collaborative housing, we have this cooperative housing tradition in Oslo, but we also have a market liberal approach, which means that the type of collaborative housing in Oslo that develops in a particular way. So, for example, we've had, you see on the right top right corner, there's an image of a model for a housing project for the Young Artists Association, which attempted to establish their own housing cooperative and have a self-build model where they would have subsidized homes, which have not been successful. And so we have a lot of these smaller groups where we're trying to develop these non-commercial projects, but they are not succeeding, and largely because of both the price of land, restrictions on loans, and the lack of subsidies. So what is happening is that we have in later years had an increased amount of the participation of people in planning and building stages of commercial projects, and that has come about as a matter of developers and particularly the housing cooperative associations realizing that they're not necessarily selling the type of apartments that people want with the type of amenities that they need. And lately, there's also been some smaller self-build dimensions within housing projects. So we've had kind of smaller adjustments so that you can retrofit your own apartment instead of moving into just like a finished built apartment. So different type of housing typologies, which has come about so also generational apartments where families can live together and share certain spaces, an increased amount of focus on shared amenities, and also where the housing associations have been particularly helpful is in implementing sharing technologies for the individual housing cooperatives. So, for example, apps that allow you to share more or ask for favors from your neighbors. And there, I think you can say that the cooperative housing associations holds a particular role, also when it comes to approaches that has more to do with kind of a climate transformation. And I think here in the Oslo context, we see the potential of the housing association as laying the ground for allowing for local energy production, local food production, shared mobility, and also more sharing facilities and technologies. And some of the major housing associations in Oslo are currently taking a lead on that front. We have the Ubos Living Lab, which is a sort of experimental project which are trying to sort of develop new types of or new ways of living together, and also developing new ways of sharing that are more socially and environmentally sustainable. The aspect that is, of course, is missing here is the sort of is the affordability aspect of it, which is hard for Oslo to develop because of both national and local restrictions. Like I said, land prices and building costs are high, and it's very difficult for individual groups to initiate their own projects. And for the city itself, we don't have an easy way into helping these groups either, due to both local and national regulation. When it comes to loans, the Norwegian context does not make it easy for building groups to ask for joint loans. So that is also a barrier that these groups are experiencing. There is neither models that plan for contracts and the kind of division of responsibility if a group of people were to take on a building project on their own. We also have a lack of municipal zoning categories. So, for example, I know in some like other European countries, you can regulate for certain types of housing that is either social or otherwise, that helps categorizing the land and also reduce the price of the land when it's on for sale. Yeah, and then like I said in the beginning, the cities also, we have a restriction on the sale and lease of public land. So that's where we are at the moment. And yes, so what we're doing, we've learned a lot through the NETCO network, and we're currently building knowledge and learning from other cities. And I think maybe that's where I will stop because I've used a lot of time.
Thank you very much, Kristen. Yeah, that's true. We are running behind. But nonetheless, I would like to ask you a big question, if you could give us a short answer. And that is, because we see with collaborative housing in all of our cities that innovation is extremely important, dealing with the challenges we have. And you've presented this living lab, the Opus Living Lab. Maybe if you could give us just a few more sentences about how the Living Lab is or could be or is expected to contribute to collaborative housing or cooperative housing, or maybe even co-living in Oslo.
Yeah, so it's the largest housing association, Obos, runs this living lab, and it's a building where you have different types of apartments, and where people can apply to move in, and so you live in different arrangements, from bigger collectives to joint apartments. So they're experiencing with kind of concrete housing typologies. And they're also experimenting with the sharing of amenities. So what type of amenities do people would like? What type of amenities would you like to share? What would you not like to share? What is the best way of organizing it? And sort of testing out what would be most attractive and the best way of organizing that type of sharing. And that comes to more social aspects, and it also goes towards more sort of environmental and climate aspects of it.
Yeah, thank you very much, Kristen. So I do look forward to getting up there to Oslo at some point to see what's going on there with that innovation. We do have to move on. The time is running. We are a little bit behind. Rebecca, I don't want to stress you too much, but
No.
I'll just say thanks again to you in advance for making your presentation, and then we'll see where we are if we have time for a question. Okay, Rebecca from Brussels.
Thank you. I'll keep it short and sweet. So hi, I'm Rebecca Bosch. I'm European Project Manager for Brussels Housing, which is the regional department in charge of housing at the Brussels Capital Region. I'm not in control of my slides. Gosia, could you please? go forward. Yeah, thank you. Let me start by briefly explaining our local context in the Brussels capital region. So we're a region with close to 1.2 million inhabitants with 180 different nationalities. More than 60% of our inhabitants rent. The enormous rise in housing prices and the lack of social housing stock has created an affordable housing crisis in Brussels. Low-income families experience several challenges in the housing market. They're more present in disadvantaged neighborhoods. They have a tendency to live in overcrowded housing, and they spend a high amount of their income on housing at the cost of other expenses such as food, healthcare, education. So the 10% poorest Brussels residents spend on average 45% of their income on housing alone. The Brussels housing market is also coming under pressure from the financialization of housing, including the emergence of new speculative housing models, such as co-living and the conversion of homes into touristic accommodation that are rented out via platforms such as Airbnb, is also withdrawing properties from the regular rental market, thus causing tightness on the housing market and resulting in price increases. So with regards to the different types of collaborative housing there exist, we at the Brussels Capital Region have been more actively involved in supporting the community land trust model, and this since 2012. Their values align perfectly with the vision of our government and administration, and they still do. They offer an alternative way of providing affordable, sustainable, and quality housing to low-income residents of our region. So the land is considered as a common good, so that the dwellings can remain affordable from one generation to the next. But they also do community work with the residents, and they improve the surrounding neighborhood in which they are active. So how do we support collaborative housing in our region? We do so through subsidizing different organizations involved in collaborative housing. With regards to the CLTBs, those Community Land Trust Brussels, at the beginning they were subsidized by us for different projects, but not in a structural way. And in 2012, they have been officially recognized by our government by including them as a regional land alliance in our legislation, the Brussels Housing Code. From then on, we decided to financially support the CLTB in a more structural way by granting yearly subsidies to finance their projects and also to cover their operating costs. Community land trusts are now more and more widely known, but just to quickly explain the general mechanism. So the CLT Brussels, which was the first CLT in continental Europe, is of course not that different from other CLTs. According to their philosophy, land has no market value, and access to affordable quality housing is a fundamental right for all. This means that the CLT acquires land to manage it for the benefit of the community. Therefore, the land is collectively owned. However, the dwellings on the land are individually owned by the residents, or in some cases by an organization, such as an association or cooperative, and then rented out. The owners of the dwellings can sell their home, but with a price ceiling. So they can recuperate what they invested with a small additional amount. The sales price limitation guarantees that access to the property remains affordable resale after resale. With regards to the population that can benefit from this model, the conditions are stipulated in our regional legislation. The most important ones, of course, are that they cannot already be a homeowner, and their revenues may not exceed the excess income applicable for social housing registration in our region. Therefore, collaborative housing through the CLT model is destined for people or families with low income. Since the creation in 2012, the CLTB has constructed and or renovated 104 dwellings through 5 projects. And currently they have about 7 other projects under construction, which will provide another 84 dwellings. Next slide, please. Since our recognition in 2012, there was a request to formalize even further the mechanism of the CLT and the collaboration between the Brussels Capital Region and the CLTB. So therefore, on April 1st, 2021, the Brussels government adopted a decree organizing the regional land alliances, their accreditation, and their financing. So the objective behind this decree was to legislate the sector and to further specify the modalities. The adaptation of this decree also opens the opportunity, the possibility for other actors to be recognized as regional land alliances in the future. And this recognition, of course, comes with rights and obligations that are stated in the management contract. It is this approval that gave the CLTB a clear status as an operator of social housing policy. This means that are able to obtain the application of a lower VAT rate for their real estate transactions, so 6% instead of 21%. And just to give you an idea of the amount of subsidies that we give them. So in 2023, the CLTB received about 2.6 million euros as an investment subsidy and 500,000 euros for their operating costs. We also subsidize another recognized organization in our legislation. They're called associations working on to promote integration through housing. And this one is named Habitat et Participation. They inform, advise, and accompany citizens that wish to set up a collaborative housing project in our region. Next slide. Thank you. Here you can see some two examples of collaborative housing projects in the Brussels Capital Region. So on the left, you see Calico, and on the right, Casa Viva. Now, well, we've thoroughly enjoyed our participation in a NETCO network, especially learning from other existing models of collaborative housing by in-person conferences and visiting of the projects. One of the main contributing factors in a collaborative housing model is first the political willingness in providing some sort of financial support, but also in providing a legal framework, making these alternative models possible. So I think that our participation in this network has helped and will continue to help us in raising awareness with our regional government. So what will the future hold for collaborative housing in the Brussels Capital Region? Our support for the community land trust model has only gotten stronger since 2012, and especially since 2021 with the concretization of our collaboration. As for the long-term perspective, in June of this year, elections will take place. So we're not sure how the support will be further developed with the new government, and or if they are willing to support other types of collaborative housing in our region. However, we are optimistic that a new government will see the benefits of this model for our main objective, and that is providing affordable and qualitative housing for all in Brussels. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Rebecca. So there we have our 3 city presentations coming from Barcelona, Oslo, and Brussels. We have time for just a few questions. A few questions have already been submitted to us, and I would direct a couple of questions, first of all, to Rebecca, and that would be looking at the CLT model, community land trust model. How is this expanding, or is it expanding to other cities and countries? Maybe secondly, a question which could be for Rebecca or for Barcelona and Oslo is, what about scaling up? We've seen a few numbers, 1,000 apartments for Barcelona in the next 10 years. What would be the vision for the Brussels region? Where could it be in 10 or 20 years? And then finally, I have a question for Kristen. Maybe you've seen it, but the question about housing affordability. So don't want to put you too much on the spot, Kristen, but the question is, yeah, how is affordable housing being addressed, or is it being addressed in the Oslo region? So let's maybe start off with the questions for Rebecca and the CLT model and scaling up.
Yeah, okay. Well, as I mentioned, so the CLTB has, well, the CLT model in continental Europe has originated in Brussels, and since then, well, they have been solicited a lot by other cities in Europe wanting to recreate this model in their specific context. I think there are a lot of examples, as you can see in France as well. They've changed a little bit the model. They don't call it a CLT model, but it has been recreated. They're in contact with so many European cities, with the Chic project as well. They've created at the beginning a rather small network of European cities interested in community land trusts. And now they've created the European network of CLTs. So it's an organization apart that its goal is also to promote this model throughout Europe, and throughout Europe in this case. And then the other question was about scaling up. Well, like I said, for us it's quite difficult since we're at the end of let's say the present legislation or present government that is in place. So in June we'll be having another government. So that will probably change the vision and the long-term perspective. So we're really eager to see how this will develop in our region.
Okay, thanks, Rebecca. Of course, that's not a big surprise. In every city, as we all know, our governments go through changes every 5 or 10 years. So collaborative housing is working in that context. The question going back up to Oslo, and this was mentioned at the beginning, what is collaborative housing? Pierre was making the presentation. In some cities, collaborative housing is close to social housing or affordable housing. But the question for Oslo again, how do these parts of the housing market relate to each other? Cooperative housing, affordable housing, collaborative housing, and so on.
Yeah, so like I tried to say, in Norway, the housing market is very much market-based. We have a small social housing sector at 4%, which is subsidized. And so any collaborative housing effort is within, or largely within, the general market sector, which of course means that it is not particularly affordable. And the effort towards affordability in Norway goes towards home ownership. So we and not within the supply side aspect of it. So in like putting restrictions or amendments on how you build and what you build and the price that will cost, but onto supporting, for example, giving vulnerable people who have lower income better loaning conditions through the State Housing Bank, for example. So that's been the route where Norway has changed its policy from having sort of more general supply side subsidies towards individualized subsidies based on needs, which is in the Oslo context is creating an increasing divide between people who are now stuck in the rental market without sort of any prospect of getting into the housing market.
Thank you very much, Kristen. I think we might have time for one more question. I saw another question, and this would be directed back to Barcelona, and it's asking about the in the presentation.
Sí.
There was the mention of the public-private community solutions, which I think is quite interesting. We're talking about collaborative housing, but especially from the perspective of local government. So the question is a significant one: how local government, local authorities, or maybe regional government can find ways to work effectively with cooperative housing or collaborative housing. So maybe you can say something more about where this is in Barcelona, or where you think it could be going. I think it could be another source of inspiration for other European cities, the public-private community idea. Artur.
Sí, sí, muy rápidamente. O sea, es el concepto de
Yes, very briefly. This is Mazzucato concept, right? As Mazzucato said, the operators at the market, they need to create alliances. The operators, obviously, we do have on the one hand the private sector. Once they build social housing, they had to get a limited profit, right? Not to reach 30% of profit. They must earn some money and some benefits, but it has to be a limited profit. And the non-profit sector has to collaborate with the profit sector. Therefore, the organizations and institutions must collaborate. I'd like to answer how to scale up. I'd like to answer to the scaling up strategy. I'd like to offer you three proposals, very important for this organization. NETCO is the place to boost and to foster the creation of a community director of a collaborative housing that will has a social, aiming at medium and working classes. Of course, we can approve the private initiative, but this is already in the private sector hands. And secondly, to scale up, as Christy said, from Oslo, the big problem for this kind of initiatives, where the promotion and the projects lies on the profit and non-profit companies, is the difficulties to build and to construct with the prices and financing houses and units that must be affordable. So the big leap to scale up that must be promoted by NETCO is that the European Bank of Investments to fund directly local community alliances and not only the governments and the public administration. Because today we can pay a very, very low interest beyond the mortgages interest rates, right? Or to pay more than 4% of interest rates to the public banking system in Spain. And I can imagine in other European countries, the difference is huge. Whether lending money 25, 40 years or 45 years, also there is a big difference. And that's the key, right? That's the secret. Also, the European Council Bank is already giving funds to the operators. We, together with NETCO, we will have to make that the European Investment Bank to offer funds to the Brussels Alliance or the ESAL Convention or to other many European cities not going through the administration. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Artur. I think we have to conclude this particular section, but that's a very good bridge to our next section, which is making policy recommendations. So with the NETCO network, as it has been said, but to remind us again, for the last 1.5 years, we have spent a lot of time and energy learning from each other and exchanging experiences. But it goes beyond exchanging experiences. We're also interested in improving the conditions. So what about the next generation of collaborative housing, community housing, cooperative housing? Obviously, some things have to change. Artur just made a very important point, connecting us once again to the European level. So in the next few minutes, myself and Pierre will be just highlighting some of the policy recommendations that have emerged out of this network. So the recommendations are really based on input from these 16 or 17 European cities. They've been summarized here, and we will just be giving you what we see as some of the highlights. So starting off, we have on the screen in front of us, Think Ahead. What does that mean? Think Ahead is really looking at housing, or especially collaborative housing, as a long-term project. We don't just build housing for the next 1 or 2 years, we build housing for the next 50 years, or maybe even 100 years. This is a connection to sustainability. And when we say this, we're encouraging all of us, all of our city governments and all of our partners to be even more engaged in this long-term project. Think ambitious, think for the long term. What is attractive, affordable housing or sustainable housing for the next, let's say, 50 to 100 years? High quality housing that hopefully can consume less energy and fewer resources. Okay, Pierre.
Yes, very quickly, the importance of being ambitious as a local or regional government to set objectives, like Artur presented 1,000 homes in 10 years. The city I live in is smaller than Barcelona. It's Rennes in northwest France. They have an objective of 100 collaborative housing homes each year produced. Some cities have the possibility to promote one collaborative housing in each development or refurbishment or retrofit project to make sure that there is a space for these alternative projects to emerge, especially when it is still at an experimental phase and the groups that are conformed struggle to find land. So being ambitious and setting objectives, writing them down and communicating them is quite important.
At least in public land, I have to remind us that these recommendations are not recommendations coming from all of the NETCO partner cities, but from some of them. At least in public land, we see in any case the example coming from Barcelona. This is also the practice in Berlin. We also see it in Amsterdam and other cities. It means that cities would maintain their land and lease it for 75 years and maybe for 99 years. Or perhaps work with a community land trust, like in Brussels, and allow or encourage a community land trust to manage the land in a nonprofit way, also for the long term. Of course, this has to do with the affordability, and the idea is taking the cost of the land out of the cost for the housing to make it more affordable. Okay, Pierre.
And then on the funding side, public support can really make a difference in allowing the collaborative housing groups to get a public or a private bank loan. So there's examples, for example, from Amsterdam or Geneva or other cities, which give stimulation loans. It's a small loan that a group gets to be able to have some assets that they can use to take a bigger loan in a bank, in a private bank, for example. So they don't start with nothing, especially when it's the first project for a cooperative, a CLT, or a co-housing. It can encourage banks to trust and to give to the groups. It's especially difficult when there is a collective loan, not in a series of individual loans, because banks are not always used to this. It's generally new, so they don't have trust in this system. So when there is a public guarantee, like in Barcelona, or a stimulation loan, it makes it easier for the groups to take some loans from private banks. The same at the EU level. If we put a couple of recommendations, there is some discussions and reflections from the civil society about having, at the European scale, a revolving fund for collaborative housing that could be a shared facility for countries in the European region to be able to take loans for the same purpose, for having a collateral to take a bigger loan, for example, and then reimburse the loan that took from the European facility to this revolving fund, so that other groups can take the loan. It would be really meaningful, especially for cities or for regions or countries which have no experience yet in funding collaborative housing projects. I'm thinking specifically about Southeastern Europe and Eastern Europe, where there is groups of civil society which are very mobilized and try to get loans, and this is impossible. So if there was a European facility with European loans, Artur mentioned a European finance institution, they could have some deposit there that is allowing a revolving funding mechanism to start a lot of groups across Europe.
Okay, so last but not least, and this recommendation also connects with what Pierre was just saying, revolving fund, or what Artur was saying. It's obvious that affordable housing, affordable collaborative housing needs some kind of support these days. That can come from the local level or the national level or regional level, but it also needs to come from the European level. The point here is, finally, in summarizing, in all of our cities, we need what we call groundbreaking projects or pioneering projects projects that give us inspiration or projects that we can learn from. We learn about sustainability, we learn about people sharing spaces, we learn about people participating, we learn about different models for ownership or for renting. So these projects, when they are ambitious and when they are experimenting or demonstrating, they need some extra support. We need to be moving faster, obviously, I would say, with our learning and with our demonstrating. So this is a plea at all levels to give more support to these pioneering projects. So, okay, thank you. I think that's it for the policy recommendations.
Yes, and there are more in the report that we shared in the chat, and you're also going to receive in a follow-up email. So now we give the floor to Maite, who is a housing manager of the region of Navarra and former coordinator of NETCO when she was working for the city of Barcelona. Maite.
Hi. Good afternoon. Thank you very much. We are still 129 people connected, so that's a good sign. And first of all, I would like to say that these 2 years' time of exchange have been really fascinating, because we have been witnessing the evolution and the growing interest among cities, among initiatives, and among researchers about collaborative housing. Indeed, we are still receiving petitions and invitations from cities and organizations, such as, for example, the European Network of Housing Research, that this next year will take place in the Netherlands, in the University of Delft. They have just invited NETCO to be presented there, the report that has been just presented. And also, as well, through the European Commission, with an invitation to participate at the European Week of Regions and Cities in October. So definitely the collaborative housing is a trending topic along with the housing issues in the EU. The main objective of the NETCO so far has been sharing an expertise and knowledge on collaborative housing from the point of view of municipalities, of local staff, from people working in housing agencies, from civil servants that in many cases did not have all the resources and capacity to exchange and learn from the side of the public sector how to support and structure the programs to promote this line of access to housing. The NETCO project is coming to an end this month, actually, in April, but there has been also an interest by many cities, among them also regions like the case of Navarra, regional government that I represent now, to continue and keep exchanging and learning and doing field trips and sharing resources on collaborative housing. The basis, we did a survey among cities and partners, and there was clear that they needed or they demanded online and in-person exchanges, like, for example, the site visits we conducted these last 2 years. And also the possibility offered by some cities and partners to participate in new projects, and somehow this network that would become the common space to join all this know-how. And also to this network to become more flexible, not that bureaucratic, open to the participation of cities and regions on different levels. This way, we envisage the participation of partners in different ways. Would be through a group of leading members. This is cities and regions that actively want to contribute to the network, either in kind or financially. Also, we are open for cities and regions to participate as associate members. This is to participate through activities and not have such a committed or active role, or either as partner organizations. This is non-governmental organizations active in the field and so on that want to exchange, learn, and contribute to this aim. For this goal, we are now asking people and cities and partners and potential associate members to drop an email to the NETCO project contacts.gmail.com, which is just written below in the slide, to drop an email of expressing their interest, because we will we have a deadline of the 6th of May to collect these inputs, and we will organize an online meeting among cities and regions on the 7th of May. So we are already a group of cities and regions that are willing to participate, and we would like to structure it a little bit further and design the next steps for the future. So if your city or your organization is interested, please drop us an email in this regard. Thank you very much, and I hope the NETCO project will grow bigger and further. And I believe we are in a very interesting moment at the level as well, and in Europe, to develop this further. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Maite. Thank you, everybody. We are going to end on time. I do think so. I just wanna say that first, as a part of NETCO, and thinking ahead about how to move forward, we would like to give it to you right now on live, a very short survey, which is basically only 3 questions. So if you can answer literally right now, meanwhile I'm talking, it would be amazing for us to improve the task we are doing, and to learn what to do better for the next time. So I will give it to you like 1-2 minutes. It's very short. So please fill it now. It's going to be very helpful for the organization to improve. Okay, doc. So yeah, we are finishing. I hope you are filling up the feedback right now, the survey. Just to say a few words. Well, first things first. Thank you for all the team. Without this team, it has not been able to finish and to make this possible. And second, thank you to all the current cities, the 16 European cities that have been actively involved in the development of the 2 years NETCO project. And third, just to be open, so this network so far has been between cities, but one of the ideas is to let's say in the second round of NETCO, in NETCO 2.0, whatever you want to call it, we would like to introduce and to include academia and civil society and other actors in this network, because it will strengthen the capacity of this network to be here and to be able to learn from each other, and to be able to influence even the EU in the sense that we were making so far. Yeah, so keep in mind that this network will grow. Please send us an email if you are interested to participate, especially if you're a city, but if you are an organization or a research group in an academia or whatever, or a housing project, please send us an email in the email you are seeing. And again, we are on the time. Thank you very much. Thank you for your participation, and see you soon. Take care.